In the mainstream fitness industry, there's so much conflicting advice about what you need to do to build muscle. But what we find is it really boils down to following a specific set of principles. Well, on this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, we have an expert guest who is going to dive into what these principles are and how to go about following them. We're going to cue our introduction and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset, and the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and today we are diving into this idea of what do you really need to do to build muscle. A lot of times when we think about trying to get stronger, trying to build muscle, the questions may pop up of like, how do we know if these exercises are right for us? How do we know if these are the exercises that we need to do? How do we know if these exercises are working? And what we find is with as much conflicting advice as there is within the mainstream fitness industry, it really all boils down to following a specific set of principles. And on this week's episode, we have an expert who's going to dive into these principles for you. But before we do, we have an ask for you and we have a free gift.
That's right. If you've been enjoying this podcast for 5 minutes or for all 5 years, I think. Wow. The one thing that you can do to really help us out is to leave us a rating and review here on the podcast platform. Little do you know, this really helps us, number one, boost our viewership, let people know that we're providing value and important information for your health. And number two, it helps us score more and more great podcast guests just like this one. So pause us now and scroll to the bottom and give us that rating and review. We really appreciate it. Second of all, a very new thing that we just started is we have opened up our Exercise for Life membership for free for you to try. All you have to do is go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com and you can get your 2-week free membership there. A lot of our listeners love listening, hearing about the concepts. They all make sense. And then they're like, wait a second. How do I apply all this? Can we do it with you? In that free membership is where you're going to do it with us. So we'll see you in the membership.
So this week, we're really excited about the guest that we have coming on because he is a fellow colleague, he's a friend, he's somebody that we've known for quite some time, and we're really excited for you to experience his expertise really on this subject of building muscle, on building strength, which for a lot of people feels really confusing because we hear so much conflicting advice about what to do, how to go about doing it, and everything like that. He really cuts through all the noise and says, hey, just follow these principles if you're looking to build muscles. So we want to introduce to you none other than Nick Horvath. Nick Horvath is a body transformation coach. He works in person and online. He's also an MAT practitioner, like I said, one of our fellow colleagues, and we're really excited for you to hear what he has to say. Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to our show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Charlie. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, brother, I'm really excited about today's conversation. You and I have known each other for, over half a decade now, since 2018. And we've been connecting a lot more over the past few years, really about kind of fitness influencers and so much of what we're seeing on Instagram and everything like that, and how it's just it is convoluting things. It's making things overcomplicated for people, and it's really leading people astray who are trying to exercise, trying to get good results. And so what have you seen from a fitness influencer perspective that's really doing more harm than good in a lot of ways?
I'd say that they just overcomplicate things. And, we've had some discussions on, hey, what do you think this person is making this outlandish claim that this is not this muscle or this is not the most optimal way to do something based on this study or this study. And then, we chat about it and we kind of break it down and we're like, okay, well, and then we wait and, a couple of months later, they end up retracting their statement. But in the midst of that, I find that it creates so much controversy between the educators that, your crowd follows one person and a crowd follows another person. And, a lot of times they're being made astray or they're attacking each other or they're coming at each other. And I think from a educator standpoint or a coach standpoint, it would be interesting to kind of learn, but it's unnecessary for everybody else who just follows them to get, their basic education so they can build muscle, lose fat, feel healthy, feel good, that sort of thing. And I think it can be simplified a way easier way.
No, I completely agree, man. You're so right, where people will grab onto one study and it's because they need their post for that day or whatever. It'll be breaking news, this study says this, which means you should do XYZ. And it's the which means that ends up kind of creating a lot of the issues. Because if you just say, hey, like this study said this, still kind of figuring out like how to apply it, like what the validity of it is, but something to throw around in your mind for a little bit. I'll get back to you. Then okay, cool. You're just kind of updating people, but it's the which means you should be doing this that seems to be creating a lot of the issues. And like you're saying, the irony of it all is 2 months, 3 months, 6 months down the line, a lot of them are coming back and say, well, that whole series of posts that I made about this, yeah, actually, it turns out not to be that. And so my question for you is, when because people need to get their information from somewhere, right? They're either getting it from mainstream news or they're getting it from social media, which is kind of becoming mainstream news. How would you suggest that people start to try to digest all this flood of information and just be a more educated kind of exercise and health consumer?
Yeah, I would say that the first thing is to understand that, studies, like we've talked about before, studies can have their flaws. So like case in point, like the study that came out and said, oh, a glass of wine a day or a couple of glasses of wine a week is great for you. Well, they came out and said, well, all the people that were drinking that glass of wine or a couple of glasses of wine a week were better off than the majority of people who drink alcohol. So in that case, they were healthier, they took better care of themselves, they probably had a trainer. So there's a little caveat or a little piece of that puzzle missing. So you can't always rely 100% that this study did this, so that's exactly what it means. So understanding that there's a lot of learning still happening in the industry, and sometimes the science is still catching up to the coaches and the Poliquins and the bodybuilders that have been doing it for years. And sometimes it's disproving a little bit of stuff. So you have to be kind of careful how you wade through, the fitness industry, because there's still like the 80s exercises and myths that I don't know how they're still alive, but they haven't died out. I talk about it every week. I still see people doing this one with dumbbells every week.
Sure, right?
It's like, first you have to learn what gravity is, I guess. Right. So I think for everybody else, you have to be so open-minded when you're following somebody, and look for the person that can break it down into simple terms. Just like with MAT, we have to be able to explain it to a 6-year-old, right? So if someone can convey that message, but still, if you ask them a science question, they can actually answer it, because there are some people out there that I find that he's given tips on bicep and this and that, and has no idea about how the muscle functions or anatomy.
Sure.
Right? So I think keeping an open mind and kind of investigating your people that they can explain it both in a simple way and a science way is very important. And I think when it comes down to it, really what you need to know with muscles is that they shorten the distance between the attachments. Right. That's the big thing, right? And if you understand that when a muscle contracts, that's what's happening, and your goal when you're training is to do that as much and as often as possible for what you're doing. Yeah. That makes it very simple, right? So if okay, your pec attaches in here and your front delt and your side, and it attaches along here, and you're aiming that towards the fibers, you're hitting something. But if someone comes out with an exercise like a plate press and you're not opposing that gravity, you're just squeezing stuff. Once you have that little bit of information that's still basic but very valuable, you can deduce from a good exercise, a bad exercise, good form, bad form, and learn to target the areas that you actually want to hit without having to consult the latest guru on the internet.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about, hey, if you find somebody who, they have a depth of knowledge, but they can say it very simply. They can say it very succinctly in a way that's just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then they can also go really deep on it. Like that might be somebody worth kind of, all right, yeah, I'm going to, attach my wagon to that horse and just kind of, follow what they're saying, still questioning and everything like that. But that seems like a decent resource. And then I also liked what you said about like, hey, when it comes to exercise and challenging your muscles, it's really about just kind of getting your muscles to contract, getting them to shorten, and understanding like where they attach. Now, some people watching or listening to this right now are maybe thinking, well, I have no idea where, where my biceps attach, or, where my pecs attach. And to be completely honest, like before I went through MAT, I had no idea either. So do you have like some ways that people might be able to be like, okay, what are some simple things that they could do to just kind of get a general feel of like, my muscles attach here without having to sit down in front of a textbook or go through a whole series of course. For example, one thing that I recommend like a lot of people doing is just, hey, just start by just kind of squeezing the muscles that you're wanting to work. And then that may give you some idea of like, all right, yeah, this is generally where they attach. But I'm curious, like, how would you recommend people navigating that?
So the first thing I would say is, start with like one muscle at a time. Start with like the muscle that, maybe you struggle a little bit more with, you can't feel on back day, or you can't quite hit your upper chest or whatever. And just take a look at like a little anatomy picture and look at the way that the fibers are going, and even maybe learn one muscle that you really want to learn, like that where the attachments are, and that will start to make sense. The other thing is, I would say get a coach. Hit up Charlie,
nice.
hit you guys up, like
Nice.
learn what it is and get the short answer, right? Like success loves speed. So instead of being a do-it-yourselfer for 10 years and looking the same in the gym like most people do,
Sure,
hire somebody to teach you those things. And I would recommend a strong MAT background like ourselves, where we could simplify it and be like, okay, yeah, well, it attaches here, the fibers are on here, it's an internal rotator. And then once you have that one muscle, you can kind of build off what's the next thing that you want to learn.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I can appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, just to be able to have somebody like be able to either coach you like in real time while you're doing the exercise, or just be able to give you that quick information, it's going to shortcut your learning curve like so much. It's going to speed up that learning curve so much, just to be like, okay, cool. Like, when I'm doing this exercise, this is generally where I should feel it. And this is generally like the sensation that I should have, because these muscles, attach in these spots. And again, you don't need to know like the anatomical names, but just having a general idea makes all the difference. Now, you have this principle called the A.I.M principle that you talk about a lot on social media, and it seems like you use a lot like with your training, with your clients, and kind of helping coach people through this concept of using this idea of attachments and then translating it into people's training. Can you walk me through this A.I.M principle?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's A.I.M, so aim. So we're going to aim for whatever we're trying to target. So the first letter stands for attachments. Right. So a lot of people, they always ask me about my chest. How can I build my chest? How can I hit upper chest? How and form? And I almost find that teaching pec fly is almost harder than teaching someone how to squat sometimes, because you're moving three joints, and I only feel it in my delts, that sort of thing. Right. So I said, well, I'm going to make it easy for you. So your pec attaches here on this bone here in between your front and side delt and everything else in here. And these fibers run in different directions. And because they run in different directions, if you aim that attachment in the same direction as the fibers you're trying to hit, you can line it up, and basically you're putting, so the eye is in line with the line of force. So if you're lining up your line of force with those fibers and you're moving those attachments closer together, which is what M is for, you're working that muscle. And the reason why I teach that so dramatically is because a lot of people, when they do chest, what tends to happen is when they press or they fly, they tend to reach forward. So if they know that those attachments need to be moving closer, not further or lengthening at any point, then they know, okay, they can help break down their form a little bit. So if they start to reach forward, I show them, okay, well, did that attachment get further or closer to where you're trying to put it? Oh, it got further. Okay. And then look at your pec, right? It's soft now, right? So you're getting less contraction. So a lot of people will talk about when you do a press or a fly, you got to hold your shoulders back. And now they're saying, oh, don't hold your shoulders back, because then it's going to grind your shoulder and you're going to wear your shoulder. And it's like, well, yes and no.
Right.
So if you understand that you need to hold your shoulders back enough that you're not letting it lengthen and you're keeping those muscle fibers getting short as they can, then you're good. But you don't want to be like holding it down and grinding in order to get there, right? So that's where I started kind of coming up with this principle, is if I can teach you here and here and bring the distance closer together, especially like lats, that's probably my best back cue, is I poke them behind the rear delt and the tricep, and I poke them down on the spine. I say, take here, put it here.
Nice.
And then and then they get it, right? And then everything moves together, and all of a sudden now they can feel their back. So it's Now they can target and feel the muscles that they want. They can target specific areas that they want, and they're going to know if their form is good because it feels different and they can think about it. Or if some fitness influencer comes out and does a certain exercise, they're going to know how to break it down to know what's good. So, I mean, one of the most recent ones that I've seen that I will do a reel on was they were on you're going to laugh at this, they were on a adductor machine.
Okay.
And they were facing away with their knees bent, and they were externally rotating. So they were basically doing like our piriformis test.
Sure. Okay.
And calling it glutes. And this is a big person who teaches a lot of people for glutes. And I'm like, man, that's not glutes. That's piriformis and deep internal rotators. Like, you feel it in your butt because that's what's under your butt.
Right,
but
right.
If you knew where your glute max attaches, you would know that you're not really doing a whole lot to challenge that, and those attachments aren't getting any closer. You're just you're just asking for some sciatica and some back and hip problems, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I love helping people, but I don't want to be, pushing forward a narrative where people are going to lose a lot of money out of their wallets coming to us to get fixed on someone that was just, I wouldn't say incompetent, but just doesn't know enough.
Sure.
Really make it effective.
No, I got you. Okay, so let me break this down a little bit further. So you have A, which is your attachments. Okay, so the acronym is A.I.M. Attachments in line with the fourth, and then it was
moving closer together.
Okay, moving closer together. Okay, attachments in line with the fourth, moving closer together. Okay, so A, attachments. All right. So what we're talking about here is just kind of, yes, you can break out the anatomy book and know that, hey, like your pec attaches exactly here and exactly here. But again, if you just kind of do that gentle squeeze and of the chest muscle, you can feel, okay, like generally speaking, my pec attaches around here at my shoulder and around here, at my sternum. Okay, cool. Now that I have these kind of attachments figured out, then the second one is I, in line with the force. Can you tell me what that means?
Yeah, so the fibers run in different directions, and you want your line of force. So you want your resistance opposing that line, right? So a lot of people, for example, like perfect example, people just don't understand how gravity works and how free weights express it, right? So you got this like chest plate press, right? But what do a lot of people do it standing?
Okay.
Right. So if you're here and my line of, I could, can only exert force down with gravity.
Sure.
That's not really opposing very much in my chest. If anything, I'm making it easier and I'm making it harder. My front delts are doing most of the work. Right?
Sure.
Whereas if you laid down and you had dumbbells, or you had, even if you still had the plates, not a great exercise anyway, but for the sake of purpose, now that I'm opposing gravity, that line of force is lined up. So the same thing, everyone always asks, how do you hit the upper chest?
Yeah.
Well, I say, well, you want this attachment to come close to your manubrium, like the end of the clavicle here, right?
Sure.
So you want to line that force up and line all these fibers up. So your line of force needs to follow that direction of the fibers to help bias that area of the tissue.
Okay, cool. And so again, for like somebody who's listening to this right now, when we're talking about line of force, are you thinking, all right, if you're using like a free weight or a dumbbell, or you're doing body weight exercises, the line of force is essentially like straight down to the ground, okay? Because that's, gravity interacting with your body, or the free weights are thinking straight down. When you start to add in bands, or you start to add in cables, now all of a sudden the line of force it's not perfectly accurate, but it would be more accurate to say it would be in the direction of the cable, or would be in the direction of the band. Again, not perfectly accurate, but accurate enough for the sake of the context of this conversation. Okay.
Exactly.
So when you're looking at, okay, my muscle attaches generally from here to here, whatever muscle you're going to work. Okay. If we're going to talk chest, we're talking from, the front of the shoulder area to like the middle of, the torso area, that sternum. Okay. Front of the shoulder to the sternum. Okay. Now, the next step is to have a line of force, some kind of resistance that goes in line with that chest. Okay. So that would be, is that what we're talking about? Kind of like you have your attachments, and then you want your line of force in line with that. The more in line you can make your direction of force to that muscle, the greater likelihood that you're going to be working that muscle. Is that the idea?
Yeah, you're going to challenge those fibers, right? So you can be specific in what you're targeting to a different level.
Nice. Okay, awesome. So that's the I. And then M is the moving closer together. what does that mean? And I mean, like, we can figure out the movement, but like, what does that mean? And why is that important?
So when a muscle contracts, essentially what it's doing is we're shortening the distance between the attachments, right? All the fibers are contracting and getting shorter. Now, how you're positioned can determine how short those fibers can get. You know, you've got a shortened position, a lengthened position, and a kind of something in the mid-range, right? The reason why it's important is so that you're always trying to get that muscle as short as you can for the position that you're in. Right? That's the goal. You're trying to get nice big contractions, right? So it also really helps with form and correcting your form in terms of, if you always have in your mind that they're moving closer together and anything else in that contraction portion of the rep is not no bueno, it's not good, then you can break that down, right? So case in point, like we talked about, when most people do a press, what do they end up doing? Well, they end up reaching all the way forward. Right? And then they never develop the chest, their shoulders are the ones that take all the force. And I say, okay, well, why does that happen? So if your attachment's here and here, and you come forward, did that get closer or did they get further?
Right.
I got further. Okay, so did you get more or less contraction? Oh, I got less, because you can feel it's not as hard, it's not as contracted, it's not as short. Right? So then you go, okay, well, if I pull my shoulder back a little bit and I focus on just bringing that distance in, it's going to help a lot, right? And knowing where those kind of points are and that they're moving closer together also helps with a lot of people who they cable crossover, right? And if you look at it, well, when does I cross over? Well, it doesn't, my pecs don't attach to my hands. So it doesn't matter if you bring your handles together or your dumbbells together when you're doing it. All that matters is how close those attachments get in terms of moving closer together, right? And so I give the example of when people do like a fly, well, which one's closer? Oh, well, this one's closer, right? Well, why? Because this point's a little closer, and you could see it in the pec,
exactly, right?
And if it's here, then you can play with it. You can turn your arm in, you turn your arm out, and see what the difference is. And oh, okay, well, that's a lot harder and a lot stronger of a contraction than if I go the other way.
No,
so
I can
appreciate that in mind.
No, I love that. And as you're describing all this, Nick, what I'm realizing is this is kind of like a cheat code to build the strength and size really of any muscle in your body. If you know these three things. So for example, the client, Julie rather, had a client come in and she goes, you know, I really want to build the upper part of my glutes. And I've heard that I need to be doing, you know, deep box step ups in order to build the upper part of my glutes. And there's so much mythology around this in the fitness industry of, oh, I need to do this exercise in order to build this muscle. It's like, if I don't do this exercise, I'm not going to build this muscle. And by breaking it down with this system, what you understand is there's no magic to the exercise. The only thing that you need to understand is, where does this muscle attach? Again, we're not talking like anatomical specifics. We're just talking generally, where do you feel this muscle attaching with your body? Okay, cool. Now you need to make sure that the challenge, the force, that the thing that you're using to try to challenge the muscle is, again, lining up with those fibers. If you know the direction, can we make that force in line with those fibers? And then as you're doing the exercise, do you feel those attachments generally moving closer together? If we got those three things, okay? If you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, I know I need to get my legs stronger. Okay, great. What part of your legs? Is it, you know, your quads? Is it, you know, the front of your thighs, the back of your thighs? Is it your butt that you want to get stronger? Is it your shoulders that you want to get stronger? Is it, you know, what areas of your body do you want to get stronger? What areas of your body do you want to build? What areas of your body do you feel like, these are a little bit weak and I'm worried about hurting myself because of that? You know, these three things. Generally, where does it attach? What direction is it running in? And then is the exercise that you're doing opposing that direction? And as you're doing the exercise, are those attachments moving closer together? Man, I think you just laid out the cheat code of, like, seriously, like, how do you work any area of your body? That's it. I love it.
Yeah, I don't know. It just came to me and I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. And I've been experimenting over the last couple of years, teaching that same thing. And the look on people's faces when they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. It totally changed their training, right? And I think not only is it going to help impact everyone's results, but it's also going to help people stop from getting hurt. Like, I was going to piriformis external rotation exercise, or even these huge discussions that we're seeing between, Cassim and Paul Carter and stuff.
Sure.
This thing, that thing, this works this and this doesn't work that. And it's like, I look at it and I'm like, well, here's the attachments and it's lined up. Like,
Right.
it's kind of going that way. Or yeah, this is exactly it. Or that's not even close. Like, I don't know
Right.
what this guy's on, what study he read, but he probably should read a few more.
Yeah. I love it. And it actually ties back into what we kicked off this discussion with this idea of there's so much as being overcomplicated in the mainstream fitness industry that's leading people astray, that is really not only is it convoluting the information, but it is alienating so many people from even wanting to try, because it's like, okay, well, where the heck do I begin? And I love it with like these 3 steps. You can cut through all of that. You don't have to worry about like, oh, what guru do I follow? Or, where do I get my information from? It's these 3 steps. You can apply it to every single workout that you do. And like you said, not only are you going to get better results, but you're going to stay safer in the process, because you're not going to be trying to do something that your body's not designed to do.
Exactly.
So what changes have you seen with people with their training once they start implementing these 3 steps, like going from, oh, I need to do these magic exercises, to just following these principles?
Honestly, they've hacked the cheat code. Now they get results, right?
Yeah.
They're able to feel the areas they want to work. The development in the areas that they want to hit has been exponential, and it makes sense to them. That's the biggest thing. If I can teach you and you have a general understanding, you can apply that understanding to everything else. And now the more advanced you become, the more advanced we can teach you. If that's something that they wanted to learn, right?
Yeah.
So, and a lot less injury. A lot less.
Yeah, right. I can imagine so. It makes it, again, it makes the workout sustainable. It makes it something that people can repeat, that they can keep coming back to, they can be consistent with. And that's really the name of the game.
And it's not going to change every 5 or 10 years on.
Right. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden your pec attaches here now. It's like, no. Like
there's no study that's going to come out and say it's something different.
Right. I love it. It's not like gravity is changing its direction. It's, it's just like, hey, this is how it is.
That's right. Yeah.
I love that, man. Well, you've taken this relatively complex subject matter of anatomy and biomechanics, and you make it very simple. Again, these 3 steps, and now all of a sudden it's applicable. It's not something that's just in a textbook, or it's like, oh, okay, that's like super nerdy, but like kind of great information to know, but I have no idea how to go about using it. It's like, no, this is how you go about using it. Understand generally where your muscles attach. Make sure that the force, the challenge that you're using is in opposition to that. It's in line with those fibers, and make sure while you're doing the exercise, those attachments are moving closer together. Build the strength, build the size, build the function of the muscles, the areas of your body that you're wanting to, that you feel like you haven't been able to in the past.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love it, man. Right on.
But not always easy.
No, it's true, right? It takes a discipline, because I tell you what, all the flashy stuff on social media, it's very easy to be like, oh, like that's great, but like maybe there is some like magic bullet out there if I just do this. It's like no, just stay with this. These 3 things.
That's right. I've been doing it almost 20 years, and I still haven't found no magic secret. Or this is the magic here,
right?
that I found. Is the aim. Yeah.
Ain't that the truth? I love it. All right, so I know that you also do a bunch more in terms of like helping people with, or let me ask you this actually. How does this then relate to what you see from like a muscle function perspective and people's health overall? Like you're able to help them like build the strength of the muscles, build the size of the muscle, build the function, and then how does that relate to like overall health and well-being?
So you see a lot nowadays, and I've been doing this for years, is that a lot of people prioritize losing body fat over building muscle. And now we're seeing with Dr. Gabriel Leon and some other people, and I did my recomp certification in Australia. He only focused on building muscle. And if you do the training to build the muscle tissue and challenge and the health and the strength, and you support the training with your nutrition, you don't really have to worry about the fat. Fat will take care of itself if you're doing it properly. And that means measuring things, right? You have to measure your training, you have to measure your food to know what's working and what's not working. Right? So not only are people become more effective in their training, but they can train at a different kind of intensity and become more effective in their training. So that means that they don't have to do 5 or 6 or 7 sets of that exercise. They can do 2, right? And still get the same result.
Yeah.
And then from an MAT's perspective, we talk a lot about inflammation and how that makes the body dysfunctional. And so in my years of coaching and trying to learn from the world's elite, I've discovered that there's a big like mind-body connection. And that's something that Dr. Gabor has talked a lot about in the recent few years. And he's climbing the ladder of getting more well-known. But I think he's in his 70s now, in his years of being in palliative care and a doctor, he's seen a lot of correlations between the stresses and the traumas and everything that someone's gone through mentally and how that can manifest physically in the body.
Oh, fascinating. Wow.
From asthma to cancer to any kind of rare conditions, and any other treatment has been ineffective in helping them. Whereas when they deal with their stress or they deal with their trauma, all of a sudden these conditions and illnesses and dysfunctions start to lessen or even reverse. I've seen people where there was a guy who had, I think it was like stage 3 throat cancer, and he did a therapy session with Dr. Gabor, and now he's been in remission for a long time.
Wow.
Right. So
wow, that's crazy.
I've seen it completely reversed. So from an MAT mindset and perspective, that inflammation response can happen from stress, trauma, overuse, food, even from a mental component, because it creates this biochemical residue in your body when you get stressed. And I think because our nervous systems haven't evolved as much as our brains and logic and technology in today, when we have a stress, we might feel that we've dealt with it mentally, but still in your nervous system and physically, that's still there. Right. You still have to process that energy. Right. So one of the big things that my girlfriend does is she teaches like shamanic shaking. So if you've ever seen like a dogs, when they get in a fight, they tend to like shake and vibrate and whatever after, and they're moving that energy. Right. And we don't have that education that we need to like have that physical outlet to kind of move that energy and deal with that stress and that trauma. And then I also teach some of the Wim Hof methods. So his breathing helps set up your body and your brain to handle stress at a higher level, right? Just through his breathing technique. And then through the cold exposure, he's got countless people who have written into him on every colitis, endometriosis, which my girlfriend was able to help cure herself. Wow. From brain tumors. I know he had like a 6 or 7-year-old kid who they just started with the breathing, and he had a big pineal gland brain tumor, and it's gone. Wow. It's gone, right? So having this connection in understanding all inflammation is the root and cause of any kind of illness and disease. And that if you manage that physically, mentally, spiritually, and you have those couple of those practices, the level you can live and the health level that you can live at is so much higher. And the longevity and quality of life that you're going to have is going to be exponential compared to.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, that honestly, that's a whole other like conversation rabbit hole that we could dive deep into. So how can people like learn more about your work, connect with you, and find out more about not only the AIM that we talked about, for the first, 80% of this podcast, but that last little bit that you talked about, the work that you're doing with people in that regard.
Yeah. So I go through that on my Revenge Body and Revenge Booty programs. They're in the first couple of months. We talk about habits, inflammation, the mind. And so each month is a bit of a different theme. So the best place to reach me is probably on Instagram at the.revengebody. Or .revenge booty if you're a booty enthusiast, you want to grow your glutes.
Love it.
And then I also have my Instagram for muscle activation techniques, which is I Am the Muscle Mechanic.
Nice.
Or you can find me on Facebook at Nick Horvath.
Perfect. Right on, man. Nick, the question that we like wrapping up with for all of our guests is, what is your definition of health?
Definition of health. I think the health is almost too vague for most people and how they define it, because health can mean, I eat healthy, I do healthy things, right? So I guess it's determining what level of quality of life and longevity you want to live at, and then doing everything you can to not just get to that point, but stay there. You live your life leaner, live your life with the booty that you want, live your life where you're pain-free and you can walk briskly across the floor, no problem. You're not shuffling because you feel stable. So I would say living at the level of quality of life that you want to live at.
I love that. Right on, man. Nick, I appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate our communication on so many different levels. And I appreciate everything that you shared during today's episode. This was awesome. I mean, just again, the simplicity of the A.I.M principles of just being able to, again, understanding the attachments, making sure they're in line with the force and making sure they're moving closer together. If you're listening to this or watching this right now and you're like, yeah, there is that area of my body that I really wish I could grow, whether it's, my shoulders, my chest, my butt, my legs or whatever, and, grow from a muscle perspective. Or if you're like, hey, I really want to strengthen these areas of my body because I'm worried about, my back being too weak, my core not being strong enough, my arms not being strong enough to, hold, carry my groceries or, hold my grandkids or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what your goal is in that regard. Those 3 steps are going to serve you so well. And Nick, I really appreciate you laying them out for us, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show. And thank you so much for all of your time and your friendship and communication as well. I have a fantastic time talking about different concepts and ideas with you and picking your brain.
Art, was that an awesome interview or what? I mean, let's be serious. With as confusing as can be of like what to do when you work out, Nick really makes it simple for everybody to follow when it comes to building muscle, building strength. So hey, if you want to keep up with what Nick is doing, make sure to follow him on Instagram and make sure to send him a DM if you're interested in working with him either online or in person.
That's right. And don't forget to get your 2-week free membership and become an Exercise for Life member by going to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com.
So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is wanting to build strength, that is wanting to build muscle, but they feel really confused by the process and they're not really sure which direction to turn because of how much confusing information there is out there? Share this episode with them so they can get clarity on the basic principles that they need to follow in order to get the results that they're looking for. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and they're looking for information on health. So if you enjoyed the conversation we had today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.